Hi everybody, it's Thursday again, so here's another video. If you're just coming to my page or coming across this video, I'm talking about our journey through loss. We lost our son Gideon last November 2018 due to something called bilateral renal agenesis, which is the lack of development of the kidneys and sometimes the bladder. For us, it was the bladder as well. Causing the child not to be able to have lung development to where they can survive after birth. There are some treatments that they're working on to prevent death after birth so that they can they do amnion infusions. So because we're not developing any amniotic fluid, they inject a saline solution to help kind of have the baby swallow that and get the lung development going. It has worked, I believe, completely for one child, and I personally am happy to know that a woman that I know was able to take their child home from the hospital, and that baby is going through dialysis, and hopefully will be able to get a transplant down the road and be able to live a long and happy life. We found out about amnion infusions a little too late in the process, and also our hospital personally didn't do them, and we just didn't have time to try to figure that out down the road. So today I did want to talk about our birth story and the days after. I've mentioned in a couple other videos something called a cuddlecot, so I'm going to get into what that is and why it was so important for us to have it, and why every hospital should really have one. Hopefully within the next year I'm going to start raising money for those, and that'll be kind of down the road. But so we knew about our son's prognosis of not surviving at our 22-week anatomy scan. We were confirmed with that information after an MRI scan when I was 24 weeks. So we did have that knowledge. We weren't going into our birth blinded of our loss, which is one thing that we try to hold on to as positive for us personally. It did create a difficult pregnancy mentally. However, we did what we could to try to be positive throughout that for our son. So on November 5th, which was actually my birthday, I was having about 2 a.m. I woke up having contractions. I was 32 plus 4 or 5 days pregnant. So 32 weeks and 4 or 5 days. I wasn't sure if they were Braxton Hicks contractions or real contractions because I hadn't really had any up to that point that were this strong. As the morning went on, I kind of had them every other hour. My husband at the time had just woken up at the same time, about 2 a.m. He was sick, and so we both woke up and he laid there with me while I was going through these, and I said, they're not too strong, they're not consistent, I think I feel okay. So I went back to sleep again. They kind of just happened throughout the day. It was about 3 p.m. where I started getting nervous because they were getting stronger. Not necessarily more consistent at all, but just the fact that they were stronger, and our situation was so different. We didn't have any amniotic fluid, so I didn't know if that made a huge difference with contractions or anything. My husband was still at work. I came home from work about, it was probably about 7 p.m. My husband was able to come home and celebrate my birthday, and then he had to leave pretty quickly. I had messaged some women on my bilateral renal agenesis page asking them what they think I should do because I wasn't sure. I didn't want to go in being that person that cries wolf, but I also wanted to make sure I was being safe than sorry with our situation. And I would say with any pregnancy in the future, if I feel even a little off, I think it's smart to go in. I think everyone should do that because I, would rather go in and the doctors tell me I'm being crazy or being obnoxious rather than, go in and something happens. So I was happy that they convinced me to go in. It's about 9 at night when I ended up going there. They hooked me up to a few different monitors, so one around my stomach, and like my heart rate, the baby's heart rate, and my contractions. So after about an hour and a half, they said they don't see anything wrong. My contractions weren't consistent. They feel pretty confident that I was fine. They were about to send me home. They said, we're just going to finish up some paperwork and we'll let you go. So it was about 10:30, and all of a sudden I was listening to his heart rate, and it spiked up really high, and then all of a sudden dropped to 80. And I looked at it, and as I looked, it was like slow motion. I looked over to the monitor, and it felt like just hundreds of people rushed in, but it was about 10 people, 2 doctors and a bunch of nurses. They were flipping me on my side, putting me on oxygen, and I just kept saying, please call my husband. Luckily, I was able to give them his phone number. They called him, and he was able to get there within 10 minutes. The doctor started talking to me about C-sections, which scared the hell out of me. I had watched a lot of birthing videos, and I loved them, and I wasn't afraid of delivering naturally, but I watched one C-section video, and that scared me really a lot. So I was super freaked out. I didn't know anyone who'd really had a C-section. 6 out of the 7 births that my mom did were natural, and I didn't really talk to her a lot about her C-section because I just assumed we wouldn't need it. Well, it ended up being that his heart rate got back to normal. They said, I signed a bunch of stuff saying like if we needed to have the C-section, ready to go. My husband came in and we just kind of discussed it a little bit, and we said we were kind of at the point where we really just wanted to do a vaginal birth if we could. So they said that they don't think that the heart rate went back up, so they're okay, but they wanted to keep me overnight. So my husband and I stayed there overnight. We had another drop kind of really early the next morning, and then they just let us know, usually in a healthy pregnancy, like if there's a 3rd drop, they want to do the C-section to get that baby out, everything be healthy. With our situation, it was a lot different. They didn't want to force that if they didn't have to. So they ended up kind of giving us the option: do we want to do the C-section today, which now it was November 6th, or do we want to take as much time as this baby will stay in there, but with a higher potential of having a stillbirth, because while I would contract, because there was no fluid, we were having cord entrapment, and the oxygen wasn't getting to the baby. So they said there's no way for us to know, like, you could constantly be monitoring your child and potentially be able to go into labor naturally down the road, or they could do it now with a higher chance of being able to have our child and be with our child alive. We personally made the decision, after going back and forth and trying to get as much information as possible, to do the C-section. We finally had a doctor just come in and say, listen, like, I think we need to do this. If you don't, I don't think you probably won't get the chance to be with your child alive, just from what we had experienced and his experience with this prognosis and diagnosis that he's dealt with.